Hey there. I am so glad you're here. Today is going to be an important teaching on three people groups. It's going to be the Thessalonians, the Bereans, and the Athenians. So I hope you hang with me. If you're watching on TikTok, this is going to cut off at 10 minutes. I'm sorry for that. That's as long as they will let me record. If you want to pick up the rest of it, I'm not sure if I'm going to go that long, but if I do, you can pick up the rest of it on my YouTube channel. Okay, if you've watched any of my content, you oftentimes might see me hold up this Bible. This Bible has special meaning to me. My mother was pretty much a pagan, but my parents were pretty wealthy, and at the time, this was a very expensive Bible. It may not look like anything special now, but at the time, it was very expensive. It's leather. It's got my name in it, and it was just an expensive Bible. But she gave it to me when I was about 10 years old, and frankly, I was just dumb enough to think that you read it like any other book. And thankfully, at a young age, I was a reader. I was already somebody that was reading books. And so when I received this book, I thought, you just read it like any other book. And so I thought, wow, this is a big book. And you know, as I looked in it, it's like it's a lot of words. I remember just feeling overwhelming, but nonetheless, my naivety kicked in, and I thought this is just what you do. And so I read the whole thing from about the age of 10 to 11. Over the course of a year, I read the whole thing. And then I just kept doing that. And frankly, it wasn't until I was in my early 20s going to a big Baptist church that I realized that that's not what most Christians do. I started asking men rather naively, like I had no agenda. I was just like, hey, how many times have you read the Bible? Because by then I had read the Bible like, I don't know, 10 or 12 times, something like that. And I just thought that's what Christians did. But I quickly started realizing that almost nobody read the Bible, the entire thing. I'm talking cover to cover, not picking and choosing and, all that kind of stuff, but cover to cover. I just thought it was what Christians did. And so I quickly became fascinated by the reality that Christians didn't do that. And so I continued for years asking Christians, like, hey, have you ever read the entire Bible? So instead of asking them, how many times have you read the entire Bible? I realized that was a dumb question, kind of a leading question. So I started asking, have you ever read the entire Bible? Well, that sort of backfired too, because what I learned was that Christians quickly became very defensive. When I asked, hey, have you ever read the entire Bible? They'd be like, well, I've read most of it. I've never read it cover to cover, but I've read most of it, and blah blah. And it's like, whoa, I'm not. It's not a guilt trip. I'm just curious. So it's become kind of my look. There's a reason why I'm talking about this. It ties into today's study. Today's study is going to be long. If you don't like that, I get it. Okay, it's going to be long, but I just want to talk to you. If you're here, maybe there's a reason, right? There's 50 billion videos being uploaded on the internet every day. And for some reason, you stumbled across this one. So hang with me. And like I said, if you're on TikTok, I'm pretty sure you're going to get cut off. I'm going to go longer than 10 minutes. So go pick up the remainder on YouTube. So I just recently, a few months ago, completed reading this thing for the 26th time. Um, and so it's pretty much ruined my life. It's caused me to kind of be a fish out of water and swimming against the religious current and all of that. And I wouldn't have it any other way. This book has absolutely changed my life. It's helped me to understand so much about life and about God and about my relationship with Jesus Christ and who I am as a child of God. And it's made me free. Jesus Christ said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Well, this is the truth. This is a King James Bible. And so if Jesus Christ in John 1:1, it talks about Jesus being the Word. And people like to talk about the Word, the Bible, and they like to capitalize it. Well, that's a name of Jesus. And so you can't really separate the Word from the Bible. Like it's the same thing. So when you're holding a King James Bible in your hand, you got to ask yourself, what do you really hold on to? The reason people don't want to open this book and read the whole thing and avail themselves to it is because this is the only book that reads you, and it cuts your heart both ways. It'll kick your religion in the teeth. People don't like that. So if you've never read this whole thing, I want to challenge you to do so. And so today's study is about three people groups. I think I mentioned it: Thessalonians, Bereans, and Athenians. And so this is a summary of Acts chapter 7. It's a super important chapter in the book of Acts, and it supports my Bible reading challenge. If you want more information about that, it's in the description, or find me on YouTube, or hit me up here, or whatever, okay? However you want to connect with me. But I think it's so critical that you read the Bible and you do it with regularity, and that you get understanding from what you read, and you got to do the reps. You can't read the Bible once and think you know anything, because you don't. In fact, you might end up with more questions than you had when you started. And I will tell you this: there's a lot of things I know about the Bible with confidence, but every time I kick open one door, I feel like there's 100 other doors or 1,000 other doors in front of me. And so the Bible is alive. It never ends. I'm never going to get to the end of it, but I'm going to run my race as if I'm going to. Okay. So a little bit about me. Let's jump into this thing about these three people, or three people groups from these three specific cities. They're very unique, and I'm going to detail. I'm going to detail some things about these people. Okay, but I want to preface this whole thing with some verses that the Apostle Paul wrote to Timothy in his second letter to Timothy. So I'm going to read 4 verses here. 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. Thou therefore, my son. So Paul refers to Timothy as his son. Be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus. And the things that thou hast heard of me, again, me being Paul, among many witnesses, the same commit thou to faithful men who shall be able to teach others also. Hey, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to teach some others also. Okay, now here's what I think are some of the most pivotal verses in the Bible in relation to who we should be as Christians today. Thou therefore endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ. Did you know that Paul likened who we are as Christians to being a soldier? Maybe you've never heard that before. And then the last verse in 2 Timothy, no man that warreth. Okay, so again, Paul's likening our life as Christians as being in a war. So no man that warreth entangle himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who hath chosen him to be a soldier. Well, Jesus Christ chose us to be a soldier, and so pleasing him is our first calling. So we need to be a good soldier of Jesus Christ, and we need to not be entangled in the affairs of this life. Sure, there's things we have to do. We have businesses, we have jobs, we have families, we have things, right, that we have to take care of. Sure, do those things. Don't get entangled in them. Know the war that you're fighting. Hey, we live in, or we're fighting a spiritual war. And if we're good soldiers of Jesus Christ, then it's going to mean that we need to do certain things. We need to train, we need to educate, and that kind of thing. All right, so back to Acts chapter 17. We're going to look at 3 people groups. The first one is the Thessalonians. And so Acts chapter 17 opens with a bang. Paul is in Thessalonica and caused the whole city to be in an uproar. Well, why is that? Well, it's because Paul is exhorting and admonishing them about Jesus Christ as Messiah, or the Christ, or the one. And he's basically telling these people that they killed their Messiah, but that he was resurrected from the dead. And so some are believing this and they're responding to what Paul is teaching, but some are not. And those that are not believing want the truth train to run off the track, so to speak. They want Paul to shut up. And so they basically get the whole entire city in an uproar to try to stop Paul. I would say these are the types of people that are not being good soldiers of Jesus Christ, and they're certainly being entangled with the world. So again, TikTok's about to end. please look up the remainder of this video on YouTube. All right, we're going to get into the Bereans. Okay, the Bereans. In Acts 17, verses 10 through 15, we see Paul go to a very different type of people compared to the Thessalonians. And I would say an extremely rare type of person. And I would also say these are the type of people I'm searching for on a regular basis in my efforts on Facebook and my Bible study. I am trying to connect with people like I'm about to describe. They were good soldiers of Jesus Christ. They were not entangled with the affairs of this life, and they received the word with all readiness of mind. Received the word with all readiness of mind. And they searched the scriptures daily, whether those things were so. Those things being the things that were being spoken of by Paul. So let's read the passage that talks about these people. It's Acts 17 and 10 through 14 is what I'm going to read. And the brethren immediately sent away Paul and Silas by night unto Berea, who coming thither went into the synagogue of the Jews. Again, Acts, book of great transition. There's large portions of it that are very specifically Jewish, but by now we've got a really healthy mix of Jews and Gentiles, and everybody's trying to figure it out. And Paul's not really come into his own yet, but he's starting. So the dispensation of the grace of God is just in its infancy at this point. Okay, verse 11. These were more noble than those in Thessalonica. So you see how Paul compares the people of Berea to the people of Thessalonica. So he's saying they were more noble than those in Thessalonica in that they received the word with all readiness of mind and searched the scriptures daily whether those things were so. Therefore, many of them believed also of honorable women, which were Greeks, and of men, not a few, meaning, in other words, a lot of men. Verse 13, but when the Jews of Thessalonica, you with me? The Jews of Thessalonica had knowledge that the word of God was preached of Paul at Berea. They came thither also and stirred up the people. I'm going to come back to that verse in just a second. And then immediately the brethren sent away Paul to go, as it were, to the sea, but Silas and Timotheus abode there still. So listen, when you start getting a hold of the truth, when you start getting a hold of rightly dividing and Paul following and right division, people are going to come into your life and they're going to stir you up. So just be aware of it. Happened to me, it happened to everybody that starts to unlock the truth of the Bible. So personally, my goal in life is that, every day I strive to be like the people of Berea. I search the scriptures and I want to discover what the truth is. So my question is, how about you? Are you searching the scriptures daily? Do you care about truth more than ritual, more than religion, more than doctrines of men, more than traditions of men? Are you just comfortable? Are you a comfortable Christian? Don't really need to talk to anybody about the Lord. Just, that sensation of like, well, I'm good. Or maybe you're the kind of Christian that's not sure about your salvation and you feel kind of insecure and you lay down at night and close your eyes and you're not really sure if you're going to heaven or not. Okay, I encourage you, get these things figured out. Let's have a conversation. Reach out to me privately. Let's have a conversation about that. So hopefully what I'm saying here is igniting something inside of you. That's my goal. I don't ever want anybody saying, just sharing my content and saying, well, that's what Eric said. I don't care about all that. What I want to do is drive you into this book. I want you to be able to answer for yourself what you say you believe. Okay, let's look at the Athenians in Acts chapter 16 through 34. I'm not reading all those verses. I'm trusting that you're reading this, but I want to summarize it. So in these verses, 16 through 34, this is Paul engaging with this third group and those that spent their time in nothing else but either to tell or to hear something new. Wow, does that sound like the times that we live in of, social media and the information age and instant whatever we want, right? We can just go on our phone, we can go on our computers, we can We can just dial in whatever we want to hear, and we can always be hearing something new if we want to. Okay, let me read the one verse here that describes these people. It's verse 21. For all the Athenians and the strangers which were there spent their time in nothing else but either to tell or to hear something new, or to hear some new thing. Sorry. Okay, but the idea is they just wanted their ears tickled constantly. And again, that's also a reason why people struggle to read this, because to most people, until you read this thing a few times, you'll think it's just out of date, that's not relevant for today, blah, blah, blah. And you'll have an attitude about it, and you won't respect God's words. Well, I'm here to tell you, this Bible has something to say about everything today, and it's 100% relevant. That's my opinion, but I've read it a few times. Okay, the Apostle Paul later describes people like this in the second letter to Timothy, where he said, ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. I think that a lot of people live in that reality today. They're always learning, always researching something on the internet, but never coming to the knowledge of the truth. That's in 2 Timothy 3:7. Okay, the Athenians were described as having devotions in verse 23, but also being too superstitious in verse 22. So they were devoted, they were capable of deeper thought and kind of contemplative thought, if you will, but they were superstitious, right? Knock on wood. How many Christians have you heard? Oh, knock on wood, right? Why would a Christian be superstitious? Well, it's because they're ever learning and never coming to the knowledge of the truth. They don't know who they are. And so Paul preached unto them the nature of God and Christ crucified and resurrected. Okay, it's not enough to just preach Christ crucified. I mean, any Catholic can do that for you, right? They can just take their little cross with Jesus hanging on and say, see, Christ crucified. But what you don't see is Christ resurrected in the Catholic Church. Okay. The Athenians. For the Athenians, their response to Paul was like a split decision. Some were mocking and some wanted to hear more from Paul. All right, so here's my conclusion on the matter. Of these three people groups, Thessalonians, Bereans, and Athenians, which one do you identify with most? Or do you identify with any of them? But I would challenge you to think about it. I think God gave us this passage to help us maybe look at ourselves and reflect on who are we? Are we the kind that's kind of mocking and doubting God's words and kicking Paul out of our life and, just studying the Old Testament and, Revelation and James and 2 Peter and all that kind of stuff? Or are we attending to the things that's spoken of Paul? There's a difference between these kind of people. I recognize them from a mile away. So look, my last thought is, if you're identifying more with the Thessalonians and the Athenians, well, it's not necessarily a horrible thing unless you're one of those mocking people or one of those people that are trying to stir up strife among people that are trying to believe. But I would encourage you, think about who the Bereans were and seek to emulate that. Okay, man, if you've made it all this way, I appreciate you being here more than you could possibly know. Please subscribe to my channel. It helps me, encourages me, maybe helps others, people find the channel. And if you think this might help somebody else, please share it with them. Okay, man, if you want to talk about anything, let's do that. If you have any questions, let me know. I'd be happy to answer those. And that's all I got. Thanks for being here.